They stepped into the octagon with dreams of glory, but their paths took unexpected turns that led to something no fighter ever wants: being banned from the UFC. In this video, we're diving deep into the real stories behind some of the UFC's most controversial exits. Number 12, BJ Penn. BJ Penn was once hailed as one of the most iconic champions in UFC history. A former two-division title holder, his name was etched into the legacy of the sport. But as time went on, his performances declined and he suffered 7 consecutive losses, tarnishing his in-cage reputation. However, it wasn't just his losing streak that led to his UFC ban, it was his behaviour outside the octagon. In September 2019, Penn was caught on video involved in a street fight in Hawaii, where he was knocked down before retaliating violently. The footage quickly circulated online, raising concerns about his personal well-being. UFC President Dana White responded saying, "He won't fight again, that's it, that's a wrap." White admitted he had hesitations about letting Penn continue fighting even before the incident, but this was the final push. BJ Penn's UFC career ended not in the cage, but on the street. Number 11, Renato Sabal. Renato Babalu. Sabal lost his UFC spot for a different reason: unsportsmanlike conduct. In 2007, during his bout against David Heath, Sabal secured an anaconda choke and refused to release it, even after referee Steve Mazzagatti intervened. What shocked fans even more was his post-fight admission. Speaking to Joe Rogan, Sabal confessed that he intentionally held the choke longer to teach Heath a lesson. Dana White didn't hesitate. "Completely unacceptable," he said, and Sabal was immediately released from the UFC. Though he went on to fight in other promotions, his UFC days were over, ended by a decision that crossed the line. Number 10, Jennifer Gonzalez. Jennifer Gonzalez, a Chilean bantamweight, holds the unfortunate distinction of being banned from the UFC without ever stepping foot inside the octagon. Gonzalez was signed to the UFC in 2021, but her debut never happened. Why? The UFC's anti-doping partner, US Anti-Doping Agency, flagged Gonzalez for violating testing protocols, specifically for evading the organization's at-home testing program. Avoiding or evading a drug test is considered a serious offense, treated similarly to a positive result. The punishment? A lifetime ban. Her case is a clear signal that the UFC's anti-doping policies apply to all fighters, signed or debuting, and that any attempt to sidestep the rules is met with swift and permanent consequences. Number 9, Rusan Magomedov. Russian heavyweight Rusan Magomedov entered the UFC with an undefeated record and serious potential. But instead of building a legacy in the octagon, he became known for something much less admirable: multiple drug test failures. Magomedov's problems began with minor violations, but after his third anti-doping offense in 2019, the UFC had enough. Under the US Anti-Doping Agency's guidelines, multiple infractions drastically reduce the chance for leniency. The organization chose to permanently ban Magomedov, making him the first UFC fighter to receive such a punishment for repeated doping. His case highlights how the UFC treats doping as a serious issue, valuing clean competition over talent. Number 8, Gerald Harris. Gerald Harris had a solid UFC record, 3 wins and 1 loss, and gained attention for his powerful wrestling and memorable slam knockouts. But after a close decision loss in 2010, the UFC chose not to renew his contract. Although no official reason was ever given, many fans and analysts believed Harris was unfairly punished for one underwhelming performance. This led to what many call an unofficial lifetime ban. Despite years of campaigning, returning to win in other promotions, and staying active in MMA, Harris was never re-signed by the UFC. His case sparked debate on how performance and marketability often weigh as heavily as records when it comes to UFC contracts. Number 7, Wonderlay Silva. MMA icon. Wonderlay Silva was once the face of aggressive, crowd-pleasing violence, but in 2014, his UFC career hit a wall, not because of a fight, but because he refused to submit to a random drug test ordered by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. His refusal led to an immediate ban from competing in Nevada, effectively ending his UFC career. While Silva claimed the process was unfair and filed legal appeals, he ultimately exited the UFC, never to return. For fans, it was a shocking fall from grace for one of MMA's most beloved brawlers. For the UFC, it was a message: no one is above the rules. Number 6, War Machine. Jonathan Koppenhaver. Jonathan Koppenhaver, who changed his name to War Machine, had a promising UFC career in its early days. Unfortunately, his personal life unraveled in horrifying fashion. In 2014, War Machine was arrested for a brutal assault on his ex-girlfriend, adult film actress Christy Mack. The incident was widely condemned and the UFC moved swiftly to distance itself. War Machine was convicted of multiple felonies, including attempted murder, and was sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole after 36 years. This wasn't just a ban, it was an erasure. War Machine is now known not for his fighting skills, but for his unforgivable actions. Number 5. Matt Riddle. Before becoming a wrestling star in WWE, Matt Riddle was an exciting fighter in the UFC, but his career was cut short in 2013 after he failed multiple drug tests for marijuana. At the time, the UFC's stance on marijuana was rigid. Riddle openly admitted to using cannabis for medical reasons, but that didn't stop the UFC from releasing him after back-to-back violations. While today's rules are more relaxed regarding marijuana use, Riddle was a casualty of the old system. He later pivoted to professional wrestling, where he has found fame and success. His UFC departure remains controversial, especially as public attitudes toward cannabis evolve. Number 4. Thiago Silva, Brazilian light heavyweight. Thiago Silva had a solid UFC career, known for his striking power and aggression. But in 2014, he was involved in a disturbing domestic incident, including alleged threats with a weapon at a gym. Although charges were later dropped due to insufficient evidence, the UFC had already taken a stance. Dana White and company cut ties with Silva, stating that the organization holds fighters to a higher standard, especially when it comes to violent behavior outside the cage. Silva did compete elsewhere afterward, but his UFC career was effectively over, and the ban, though not always described as lifetime, has remained intact. Number 3. Paul Daly. British striker, Paul Daly was considered one of the most dangerous punchers in the welterweight division, but his temper got the best of him during UFC 113 in 2010. After losing to Josh Koscheck via decision, Daly sucker punched his opponent after the final bell, a blatant violation of sportsmanship and UFC code. Dana White was livid. At the post-fight press conference, he declared that Daly would never fight in the UFC again, calling the act unforgivable. True to his word, Daly never returned. He found success in Bellator and other promotions, but his UFC career ended with one reckless act. Number 2. Ruseimar Palhares. Few fighters in MMA history have had a more controversial reputation than Ruseimar Palhares. Known for his devastating leg locks, Palhares also developed a disturbing habit: holding submissions too long, even after opponents tapped or referees intervened. Despite multiple warnings, Palhares refused to change. The final straw came in 2013 when he didn't release a heel hook on Mike Pierce in a timely manner, risking serious injury. The UFC swiftly released and banned him, citing fighter safety as their top priority. Palhares later continued his career in other promotions, but his UFC days were over, and his reputation remains permanently stained. Number 1. Jason High. Jason High had a respectable MMA career, but it all came crashing down in 2014. After a tough TKO loss to Rafael dos Anjos, High was frustrated and emotional. In a moment of poor judgment, he shoved the referee, upset about what he felt was an early stoppage. The UFC took swift action. Dana White announced that High was cut from the roster and that putting hands on an official was completely unacceptable. Though High apologized publicly, the UFC never reinstated him. His case serves as a reminder of the importance of professionalism, even in the heat of battle. These 10 fighters illustrate the UFC's commitment to maintaining a safe, fair, and professional environment. Whether through anti-doping violations, unsportsmanlike conduct, or criminal behavior, the UFC has made it clear that no fighter is above the rules. While some of these stories are tragic, others are cautionary tales or examples of evolving policies. In all cases, they serve as reminders that in the UFC, talent alone isn't enough to keep you in the octagon. Discipline, respect, and accountability matter just as much. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update.